If you want to litigate, go after the DNC, Crooked Hillary, the dirty cops, all of these things. That's what should be litigated, because that was a rigged system. And I am breaking down the swamp. If you look at what's happening, they're getting caught, they're getting fired. Who knows what's going to happen from now on, but I hope it's very strong.
Welcome back. President Trump is making it very clear that he plans to fight House Democrats investigating his administration and campaign. House Democrats, though, have not laid out how they plan to fight back. And my next guest may help shed some light on that question. Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, Democrat from Pennsylvania and vice chair of the Judiciary Committee. She joins us now. Congresswoman, thank you for taking a few minutes. Well, let me ask you, if the White House does what President Trump is suggesting it does and fights every subpoena that's sent its way, what do you do then?
Well, if he's going to do that, he's precipitating a constitutional crisis. I mean, we can't say we're surprised. We've seen the White House, and the Mueller report has detailed how the White House has fought this investigation virtually every step of the way. So I think, as one of your previous guests suggested, he's trying to run out the clock.
But so what would your response be? Is it something you would do in a court of public opinion? Is it through contempt citations? Is it through, a civil process? What would you do?
Well, there are subpoenas outstanding now for the Mueller report, and there's a subpoena out for Mr. McGahn, and we intend to enforce the subpoenas through whatever means we have available.
Well, I guess the question I think I'm getting at here is enforcement. If you were to you put the subpoena out and you don't hear back, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you don't hear back, and you decide, well, OK, we're going to hold you in contempt of Congress. Enforcement of contempt comes down to the Justice Department. Is that right?
Well, it depends on which subpoena we're talking about. I mean, the problem is that the White House is now stonewalling multiple investigations. Some of those subpoenas aren't addressed to the White House at all. For example, Mr. McGahn's now a private citizen. If the White House wants to contest that subpoena, they have to claim executive privilege, but they've already waived that executive privilege. So the subpoena should stand.
In terms of, though, again, this question of do you do that through a contempt citation? What is the strategy then? You say it should. How do you make sure it does?
Well, I think it's going to depend, again, as I said, who the subpoena is addressed to and how the challenge
right.
Let's take
McGahn. Let's use McGahn as the example. I think that's the most high-profile case here. I think that's the one people are wondering about the most. What happens then? You laid out the basic starting point. What then?
Well, I think the question becomes, where does the challenge come from? Does Mr. McGahn say that he's not going to appear? I don't think that's likely. So then it's going to be the White House is going to have to come in and exert executive privilege. They're going to have to go to court to make that claim. And they've already waived executive privilege. They told Mr. McGahn he could talk.
How much time do you think, if that's where this thing ends up then, if this ends up in a court battle, how much time does that add overall in terms of your ability to get where you're trying to go on this?
Well, that's where it becomes, the president is trying to withhold information that Congress is legitimately entitled to, constitutionally entitled to. So, does that lead to further charges of obstruction of justice?
But what do you think? I mean, we're sitting here in April 2019. How much time do you think this would add? I mean, if the goal is to run the clock, are we talking 6 months here? Are we talking 9 months? Are we talking into 2020? What are you anticipating?
I would assume that the courts would put this on an expedited track, giving the central importance to our country. But it's pretty hard to speculate about that. The legislature doesn't run the courts, just like the White House doesn't run Congress.
What's the appetite? What's your appetite? What's the appetite on your committee? What's the appetite of fellow Democrats in Congress to continue fighting this potentially into 2020? There'd be some would make the case that, hey, you're making this a centerpiece issue. There's other things Democrats might want to stress. What's the appetite for keeping it sort of in the center of the political stage?
I think the appetite in the Democratic caucus is to continue to do the work we've been doing for the last 115 days to do the work that brought us to Congress, to do things such as pass good government reform, as we did in H.R. 1, to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, to pass the first gun safety legislation that's been passed in decades. So we're going to keep doing that work. If the president is going to not cooperate with legitimate congressional requests, then we'll have to deal with that too. But we're not going to give up on doing the work we have to do in Congress. But one part of our job is to protect and defend the Constitution and act as a co-equal branch of the government. And we're not backing down from that.
And in terms of that question we've been talking about this week, impeachment, where do you stand? Are you right now in favor of beginning some kind of proceeding, or is that something you want to hold out for the future, or is that something you don't think should be on the table?
We're not there yet. Congress has a lot of work to do. We don't even have the full Mueller report, and a lot of that report bears on what we do next. So the Mueller report really gave us a roadmap. Anyone who's read it knows that Congress has work to do, both with respect to looking at the underlying evidence of obstruction of justice, which that portion of Mueller's report basically reads like a prosecutorial charging document, but also with respect to the additional 14 criminal investigations that he referred, and the fact that he said the president did not cooperate with his questions. The president refused to answer any questions regarding obstruction of justice and gave unsatisfactory answers to questions regarding whether he or his campaign cooperated with Russia.
All right, Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon from Pennsylvania, thank you for taking a few minutes.
Thank you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.